Sonic Superstars is a 2D platformer developed by Arzest, yes really, and released in 2023 for all major platforms. Following the massive success of Sonic Mania, Sega wanted to continue developing 2D Sonic games alongside its more popular 3D titles. However, after plans for a Sonic Mania 2 apparently fell through, Sega decided to turn to Arzest, yes really, to develop their next 2D Sonic game. Arzest already had plenty of experience with the platformer genre, having previously developed Yoshi's 3D World, as well as Balan Wonderworld. Okay, I never said they had experience creating good platformers. However, what Arzest did have was Naoto Oshima, Sonic's original character designer. This guy has created some of the most iconic characters in gaming, like Dr. Robotnik and Vector the Crocodile? Look, at least he didn't design that bat with the fat tits. I mean, what purpose does this character even serve in a Sonic game?
How about checking that out from some other angles? Here we go!
Anyways, Oshima ended up being a wonderful asset to Sonic Superstars development. Classic Sonic has never looked better in a 3D title than he does in Superstars, and I feel that's mostly down to Oshima's wonderful eye for character design. More importantly, however, Arzest also had the one, the only, Yuji Naka, the creator of the original Sonic the Hedgehog. With him on the team, there was no stopping Superstars from being one of the greatest Sonic games ever made. Is what I would be saying had he not been sentenced to 4 years in prison for insider trading shortly before development of the game had begun. Look, I'm going to be honest, once I found out Arzest were developing Sonic Superstars, my hype for the game pretty much evaporated. These guys had yet to prove themselves as competent developers, never mind worthy of developing a mainline Sonic game. But much to my surprise, I really think they pulled it off. Sonic Superstars is fantastic, and easily the best game the studio has created so far. It might even be one of my favourite Sonic games, period. Is it better than Sonic Mania? No, but it does do certain things objectively better than that game. For one thing, every stage in Sonic Superstars is brand new, while the vast majority of Sonic Mania stages are simply remixed versions of older stages seen in previous games. Also, the Emerald powers introduced in Superstars give players far more ways to navigate the game's levels, as well as new ways to create shortcuts or find secrets. I think Mania is overall the better game, but to be honest, I don't think Superstars is very far behind it. Sonic Superstars received relatively positive reviews at launch, especially for a Sonic game released in the last 10 years. Some critics praised the game for its attempts at innovation, as well as its consistently great level design. However, the majority of critics had serious issues with the game's excessively long boss fights and atrocious multiplayer. Yeah, you see, the big gimmick with Sonic Superstars is that it's the first mainline game in the series to allow 4 players to play simultaneously on a single screen. And hopefully the last. I remember back during the Mega Drive days, forcing my brother or sister to play as Tails so that they could fly me around the levels every now and then. Of course, they would always fly off the screen every 5 seconds and would want to stop playing after about 2 minutes. But, you know.
I had my fun, and that's all that matters.
Playing as Tails in the early Sonic games was a miserable experience. I think everyone knows that by now. So now imagine the same kind of thing, but this time with 4 people. Thankfully, I was spared from this misery by the simple fact that my brother simply refuses to play the game with me. I think his exact words were, no way, I'm not going through that shit again. It'll be exactly the same as Sonic 2 where you kept running ahead and I never got to play. It's not fair, Ben. Sonic Superstars actually triggered my brother's PTSD. That's how bad this game's multiplayer is. So for that reason, all of the footage I captured for this video will be strictly single player only. If you want to see what a clusterfuck the multiplayer actually is, there are plenty of videos out there. Fan reaction to Sonic Superstars has kind of been all over the place since release. Some people love the game and some people hate it. It's an incredibly divisive game, but thankfully I no longer follow the Sonic fandom that much online anymore. These days I'm just a normal casual fan of the series. Yeah, you like that, don't you, you dirty little fucker? Is there anything else you'd like me to make longer? Go on, tell me you want me to make it longer. Tell me you want me to make it longer! I'll play every game when they come out, but will instantly move on and forget about them upon rolling the credits. The only reason I'm making this review at all is because I love this game, and I think some people really misunderstood what Arzest were really trying to accomplish with Sonic Superstars. So with all that out of the way, let's start talking about the game itself. Oh, actually, one more quick caveat. What the hell is this? Is it just me, or is this box art legitimately horrible to look at? Especially when compared to the simply gorgeous reversible cover art. Why aren't we allowed box art like this anymore? Why does everything have to be a 3D render of the main character? Sorry, but I had to quickly get that off my chest. So Sonic Superstars begins with, alright, and one more thing. I'm sorry, but can we please stop having region-specific pre-order bonuses for games? The US got this beautiful diorama for pre-order in the physical release, while us Europeans got these shitty pins. Do better, Sega. Some of us still buy physical games, and would like to get the same shit as everyone else. Anyways, now that I've got that very important topic off my chest, and have begged all of my ex-girlfriends to never show this video to anyone, let's begin. Sonic Superstars begins with an absolutely gorgeous hand-drawn animated cutscene. I applaud Sega for being one of the very few big publishers to still support pixel art and hand-drawn animation when everyone else seems happy to stick to cheap-looking CGI for their cutscenes. We are then brought to this gorgeous title screen where all the main characters appear. And if you look very carefully, you can even see a fifth spot where a super secret character may appear. Oh, put your head down, you stupid bitch. From the main menu, you can select a few different options, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to stick to the main campaign. Before you begin the game, you'll have the option of choosing between 4 starting characters. Sonic, who can use the drop dash, Tails, who can fly, Amy, who can double jump and swing her hammer, and Knuckles, who can glide and climb walls. Outside of a few character exclusive levels, every character will play through the exact same stages, so you aren't missing out on much by choosing one character over the other. For this video, I'll be mostly playing as Sonic. Upon choosing your character, the game's opening cinematic plays. Look, the animation is lovely, and I'm sure this kind of thing is interesting to someone, but I don't really know or care what's going on here. I don't play classic Sonic games for the story. Also, since there's no spoken dialogue in the game, I have to just try and interpret what the hell is going on here. And nowhere on the box did it say I'd have to be dealing with that shit. After this cinematic, the game finally begins. The first zone in Sonic Superstars is titled Bridge Island Zone, but in reality, it bears more than a striking resemblance to Emerald Hill Zone from Sonic 2. Still, at least it's not Green Hill Zone again for the 90th frickin' time. The first thing you'll probably notice upon playing the game is how much the developers have nailed the feel of a classic Sonic game. This is the best 2D Sonic has felt in a long time. He has good momentum and doesn't take forever to reach full speed. Also, unlike Sonic 4, you can't remain stationary on slopes, so bonus points for that too, I guess. I recently replayed Sonic Forces, which made me remember how much I despised that game. In fact, it might actually be my least favourite Sonic game ever made. No kidding, I genuinely think Sonic 06 and Shadow the Hedgehog are better than this dog shit. In fact, Sonic Forces is so bad, it actually made me question if I ever enjoyed this series at all. Upon thinking about it further, however, I realised that my only 2 major issues with Sonic Forces were with its abysmal level design and how horrendous the game felt to control. I don't think people truly realise how vitally important good level designers are to an enjoyable Sonic experience. To be honest, I never really understood why level designers for video games never get the praise they deserve, as they arguably have one of the most important roles in a game's development, especially in relation to platformers. And when you match excellent level design with competent controls, that's usually enough to create a memorable 2D platformer. And thankfully, Sonic Superstars nails these 2 vital aspects. Sonic Superstars' levels are amongst my favourite of the entire series. Every zone feels significantly different from the last. For example, the first zone, Bridge Island, focuses a lot on speed and simple platforming. However, it also has some really cool set pieces, like this scene where a massive robotic fist chases the player throughout a large portion of the level. It's almost like something you'd see from a Donkey Kong Country game. Meanwhile, Speed Jungle focuses more on high-speed grinding sequences and multiple pathways. The second act also has a section where you need to use fireflies to light the way ahead, and while this sequence is kinda shit, this is the kind of thing you simply never saw in other 2D Sonic games. Most classic Sonic games have plenty of environmental variety, but you're almost always doing the same thing in many of these levels. Sure, some of them might have a water section or a unique gimmick, but most of the time all you're doing is running fast and jumping. Meanwhile, in Sonic Superstars, you have zones like Pinball Carnival that see players 1 minute being flung around the environment by pinball flippers, and the next having to jump from one exploding train car to the next. The theming of this stage is also incredible. A spooky haunted amusement park where all the regular enemies have ghostly sheets thrown over them is fantastic. Practically every zone in Sonic Superstars has some kind of unique gimmick or gameplay mechanic. My favourite is probably the shape-shifting mechanic in the cyberspace zone. In this stage, you go from playing as regular old Sonic to suddenly playing as a jellyfish, or a mouse, or even a rocket. Are any of these new forms fun to play as? No, in fact they're kinda suicide-inducing. But again, it's something different. Sonic Superstars really tries to mix up the classic Sonic formula, and even if it doesn't always succeed in what it's attempting, at least it tries, which is more than can be said for a lot of Sonic titles. Aside from the multiplayer, the biggest new addition to Sonic Superstars is with the introduction of Emerald powers. So in most classic Sonic games, if you wanted to unlock any additional abilities for Sonic, you needed to find these big rings that took you to a special stage. If you successfully completed the special stage, you were given an emerald. If you collected all 7 emeralds, you gained the ability to turn into Super Sonic. Super Sonic basically made the player invulnerable to all damage, and allowed Sonic to jump and run a little faster. As long as they didn't run out of rings, get crushed, or fell into a bottomless pit, the player was basically invulnerable while playing as Super Sonic, which trivialized a lot of the game, but in the best possible way. You had to work for Super Sonic, you weren't simply handed him on a platter. It was a legitimately amazing unlockable when it was first introduced in Sonic 2, but in the decades since, Super Sonic has begun to feel a bit tired in all honesty. Yeah, the 3D games have tried to mix up his formula in some fun ways. The Titan battles and Frontiers were genuinely incredible, but as far as the 2D games go, there really isn't a huge amount more you can do with this guy. It's for this reason that in Sonic Superstars, instead of having to collect all 7 emeralds to unlock all this additional power, you are instead given a cool upgrade with each emerald you collect. Collecting emeralds works in a similar manner to how it did in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Simply find a giant ring hidden in the environment and jump into it to be taken to a special stage. Honestly, Sonic Superstars' special stages might be my favourite of the entire series after Sonic Mania. I think everyone agrees that Sonic 1's rotating maze was horrific, and that Blue Sphere is just boring as shit. And while I do like Sonic 2's half-pipe stages, they were often very cheap with how we were never given enough time to react to shit coming up around the corner, and as such, you simply had to learn the stages off by heart to have any hope of beating them. Sonic Superstars' special stages are simple enough. You simply swing from grapple point to grapple point, chasing after the emerald. Most of these stages are mercifully easy, but even the most difficult ones simply require you to use boost pads, or to cut off the emerald's path up ahead in order to succeed. They aren't super fun, admittedly, but they also thankfully aren't super frustrating either. They are easy and relatively quick spurts of gameplay that never outstay their welcome. Once you successfully complete a special stage, you will receive an emerald as well as access to its unique power. For example, the first emerald you collect will give you access to the avatar power. When activated, this power will fill the screen full of Sonic clones, or the clones of whatever character you are currently playing as. This power-up isn't very useful during regular gameplay, but during bosses, it is simply invaluable and can make short work of many of these guys. Collecting the second emerald will give you access to the bullet power-up, which is probably the most useful yet overpowered ability in the game. By activating bullet, you can essentially boost in any direction as many times as you'd like, until you either get hit or the ability's allotted time runs out. As fun as this power-up is to use, it can occasionally break the game, as it's simply too overpowered. There needed to be a stricter time limit on how long these abilities can be used for, before needing to be recharged. However, it's these new emerald powers that make traversing many of the game's levels so much fun. No other classic Sonic game gives you this much freedom to express yourself and tackle levels in any way you see fit. Flying through a speedy section in Sky Temple Zone before using Bullet to carefully bypass a tricky platforming section is the kind of flexibility you never find in earlier games, and it's why I found so many of these levels to be endlessly replayable. That's not to say all powers are created equal, because they certainly are not. For example, this ability that causes a beanstalk to appear from the ground is only useful in a few very select scenarios, and even then, you're still better off simply using Bullet if you have access to it. Then again, maybe I'm just not being creative enough, and some players have managed to break the game entirely by using this thing. Likewise, the Aqua ability allows the player to freely move around underwater, which is incredibly useful during the game's one water level. The most useless power by far, however, has to be Vision. This piece of shit allows you to see invisible items and platforms when used. Thing is, I can't think of a single place where this power was ever useful. You can tear through entire levels without ever finding a single place to use it, which is very weird, because I'd imagine the power to find stuff in an alternate realm would be very useful. Hey, where's my remote control? Oh yeah, I left it in the Shadow Realm. Fuck. You know, TV's overrated anyways. I think we all could do with reading more books. Yep, I'm just gonna get me some. So yeah, some of these abilities aren't super useful, but most still offer unique ways to tackle these levels that simply weren't possible in prior games. And hey, at least you'll have some fantastic music to listen to while tearing through said levels. Look, I know that was a terrible transition, but it's very late and I was just looking for any possible place to talk about the game's music, okay? I don't think I've ever seen a more divisive soundtrack in my life than the one featured in Superstars. Straight off the top, I love this soundtrack and I think it's been unfairly treated since release. There are absolutely some bad tracks on here, but the stuff that's good, well, it might be some of the best music of the entire series. Bridge Island Zone, Speed Jungle, Pinball Carnival, motherfucking Lagoon City Act 2. Let's skip that one. Look, you get my point. The first 2/3 of this soundtrack are absolutely full of bangers, and even some of the later stuff is good too, like Cyberspace Zone. Look, this is in no way a perfect soundtrack, and doesn't even come close to topping the Mega Drive games. But honestly, I think I prefer this game's soundtrack to Sonic Mania's.
You take that back!
Okay, let me explain. Sonic Mania's soundtrack is incredible, possibly even the best in the series if you don't mind listening to a soundtrack comprised mostly of remixes. But me personally, I'm always going to prefer a soundtrack that's 100% new compositions. I've heard enough fucking remixes of Green Hill and Chemical Plant Zone to last me a lifetime. I love Mania's soundtrack, and had it been mostly comprised of new stuff, it would unquestionably be the winner here. but as it is, I have to give this win to Superstars. Without question, the most controversial aspect of Sonic Superstars, aside from its local multiplayer, is with the game's boss fights, with many fans and critics finding them either boring, way too drawn out, or insanely difficult. I want to point out up front that some of the boss fights in Sonic Superstars are indeed very, very bad, especially this fight where Robotnik hides off in the background for seemingly minutes at a time, before giving you the opportunity to attack him once. And some of the boss fights are indeed way too long, with this late game fight against Fang the Sniper being one of the worst offenders. I mean, look how fucking far back it sends you when you die. But I think 90% of the bosses in Superstars are just fine, or even great in some cases. And I think the main problem is that most players simply do not know the correct way to fight these guys.
Hey, why did that happen? Who used chaos control? I just want to finish the goddamn game. Are you shitting me? Holy shit, these are garbage. Plain and simple, power-ups or otherwise. What a fucking joke, man.
Look, Johnny, I love you, but no, the boss fights in Superstars are not a joke. This is a joke. This is a joke. Oh, and you better believe this is a joke.
Oh no. Oh no. Give it your... Oh no.
Sonic boss fights have been an absolute joke for the longest time. And finally, a Sonic game tries adding genuinely challenging boss fights and is lambasted for it. And honestly, most of these guys aren't that hard. In fact, many of them can be defeated in seconds by using your emerald powers correctly. Or take this boss in Lagoon City that everyone is constantly complaining about. Look how easily I defeated by using my brain for a split second. I enjoy the fact that Superstars allows you to tackle bosses in different ways and usually rewards experimentation. That isn't to say some of the boss fights aren't challenging. In fact, some of them caused me to nearly smash my controller in frustration, especially Trip's final boss. Oh yeah, I suppose I should quickly talk about Trip for a second, shouldn't I? So upon finishing Sonic Superstars for the first time, you will unlock an all new character to the series, Trip the Sungazer. She's called Trip because she trips all the time. It's funny guys, honestly. Trip essentially serves as this game's hard mode, with levels having more traps and enemies, and bosses somehow being bigger than they already are. Trip is honestly a lot of fun to play as. She has a double jump, similar to Amy, but she can also roll up walls, similar to Knuckles' wall climb ability. When used effectively, Trip is easily the most overpowered character in the game. Which is good, because to be honest, Trip's campaign has some ridiculous moments that nearly caused me to just quit the game for good. Case in point, the final boss. This guy nearly drove me insane the first time I fought him. Not only does he have a load of bullshit attacks that will kill you instantly, there is simply no way to beat this guy on your first attempt. Instead, you need to die over and over and over again until you slowly piece together what you are supposed to do.
Oh no. Oh no.
This guy took me 2 fucking hours to beat during my first playthrough, but I gotta be honest, when I finally dealt the killing blow, the feeling of accomplishment was immense and unlike anything I've ever experienced in a Sonic game before. And that's when I realised that I would have rather taken that 2-hour fight in Superstars over any number of the boring ass bosses seen in the majority of earlier Sonic games. Sure, some of the bosses were a pain in the ass, but it's also the only Sonic game where I felt anything approaching accomplishment upon beating them, and that felt good for once. Look, I hope my point is coming through here. Arzest, for all their faults as a studio, really tried to do something new with Sonic Superstars, to evolve the classic Sonic formula through the use of Emerald powers, to create actually challenging bosses that rewarded experimentation and created a tangible sense of accomplishment upon defeating them. Sure, certain ideas like the multiplayer straight up do not work, but that should not override the good work that Arzest Studio has done here. Sonic Superstars has beautiful visuals, varied gameplay, some of the best level design in the series, a mostly fantastic soundtrack, and a rewarding level of challenge. Yes, it's a shame we never got Sonic Mania 2, but honestly, if tomorrow I found out that Arzest had been put in charge of the next 2D Sonic game, I would feel nothing but immense optimism for the project. For a first attempt, these guys practically nailed it. Hey guys, I don't usually do these end bits in my videos anymore, but I really put a lot of work into this video, so if you could remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, it would help out a lot. I usually don't like begging people for likes or shit like that, but yeah, I really poured my heart into this one, so I hope you enjoyed it. A few quick things. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I have 2 videos planned before the end of the year. One is a quick review of Laika Aged True Blood, which is the best game I played in 2024, believe it or not. I think it's an outstanding Metroidvania that has been unbelievably overlooked and underrated. It's one of the best games I've ever played, and I think you should all play it. It didn't release in 2024, but I played it for the first time in 2024, and I was so blown away by it that I feel like I need to make a video on it. The other video I want to make is a short list of horror games that have a Christmas theme. So far I'm covering games like Christmas Massacre, let's try that again, in English this time, Christmas Massacre, Grey Dawn, and Slay Away Camp. So it's a lot of work. I don't know if I'll get everything done before Christmas, but hopefully I will. In the new year I'll be taking a big break from YouTube because I have other priorities like work and my health and a lot of other things. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the content, and thanks for watching.